Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Each week, I invite you to sit in on a conversation with a new guest where we get level, bringing you real people, real issues, and real conversations. My hope is you walk away from the show inspired and equipped to level up in your own life and leadership. If you'd like a copy of the best of notes and quotes, please subscribe to my email list at louisehreed.com. Finally, you know this, I love to give away prizes and exclusive Lady Boss loyalty swag as a way of saying thanks to you for spending time with me. So to get your hands on some, simply comment on a podcast episode with the hashtag LadyBossLoyalty and you'll automatically be entered into the draw. Now, without further ado, allow me to welcome and introduce our guest today. We have Trina L. Martin. Trina is an author, speaker, technology consultant, and podcaster who uses her technical expertise to work with businesses to help them communicate with their remote clients, customers, and employees. She also inspires emerging leaders to pursue their wildest dreams with heart and grit. An accomplished and dedicated member of the US military for 30 years, she has broken barriers and made strides in her career that many said weren't possible. A native of Chicago, Illinois, Trina is the youngest of 4 children. She suffered verbal abuse by her mother that caused her to have low self-esteem and not know her worth. Although her mother tried to break her, Trina became determined, type A, and driven to succeed. Naturally gifted and skilled at finding the harmony between technology, science, and data, she has led a stellar career in the IT field as an intelligence officer in the US Navy, and now as the owner of her own technology agency. Trina has pierced the glass ceiling and excelled in positions typically held by men. I could go on and on. Let's not, people haven't joined the show to listen to me. Trina, my dear, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Louise. I am so excited to be here with you.
I am as well, as I am every week. I was riveted by you the first time we connected and spoke because of your humility and the joy that shines through you, through your smile and your eyes. You remind me of one of my boys who, I have 4 of them. If I say to him, he smiles with his eyes, and you do that.
Thank you.
I also can't wait to get into all this yumminess because I love how you have, as you said in your bio and as I shared with the listeners, how you harmonize and bring together and blend a few fields that aren't typically associated together. So maybe you could just give us a little bit of insight into what does it mean when I read you're skilled at finding the harmony between technology, science, and data. And then earlier I read about grit and heart. Tell me how all of these wonderful gems actually are sewn together.
Wow. Thank you, Louise. And thank you for that great introduction. Well, with me, it started off, as you read in my bio, I grew up in Chicago. I was the youngest of 4 children. And growing up, my mother, she was very abusive to me, very verbally abusive. And it broke me down because every time she spoke to me, it was like a punch in the face. It was like, what her words came from like the depths of her bowels. So it really started to weigh on me. When you hear that every day, when you hear you're ugly and, you know, you're not good and you're lazy, it really starts to pull at your self-esteem and your self-worth and just everything. So as I went through life, I realized that I had to get away because I wanted more. And her words actually just fueled me. It fueled me to do more in my life and to get away. So I ended up leaving Chicago, going away to the university. And that itself was an experience. But through that, I learned that I did have low self-esteem, even though I was so confident and I was the first in my family to go to college and I was doing all of these amazing things. I had to work on me. So that journey led me to just building in my career, but also later on in life, it actually took me into delving within my self-worth. So I realized that, okay, I am worthy. I am a great person. So I decided to take all these things that happen in my life and turn them around for my good and not use them to say, oh, well, woe is me, pity me. So I went to school, I got a degree in computer science. I ended up going to the university. And after a year, I realized, okay, I'm doing this alone and I have to finance my way through college, which I had no help from my family. So I ended up joining the military during that time and stayed in what we call here the reserves to work my way through college. And that started to bring out the person in me. It started to release some of that shyness and help build my confidence. So working in the military, gathering the skills I did, and then I got out into corporate and I learned how to use my computer science degree, which I was a programmer in corporate for 20 years. So I worked for some major corporations, worked on some major systems. So I took that along with my military experience, and it's led me to where I am here today as an entrepreneur.
You are just, there are so many places I want to take this conversation because like I'm just overflowing with, I don't know, this sounds very strange because we're not connected beyond, you know, us reaching out and getting to know one another a little bit through the show. But I feel like this deep sense of, I don't know if it's a sisterhood pride, I don't know what it is. But that's the emotion that I'm feeling. You talked about in your bio, and I shared when I was describing just a tiny bit into who you are and how you got to where you are. The word grit, that you inspire emerging leaders to pursue their wildest dreams with heart and grit. And what I know about you and what you just shared now, talk about heart and grit. That's you, like full of heart and grit. You are, those who are listening cannot see this. Those who are watching on YouTube can. Here we have a woman who has come from a variety, when I think about sort of inclusion and diversity and belonging, you've got a few, I don't like to use the labels, right? But there's a few things or a few labels that, you know, might be on you that could have held you down. It's one thing, I'm a woman, it's one thing to be a woman, that's one label that can hold us down. We know through the data, and unlikely you know through experience, you throw any other of those quote unquote labels on top, and those are factors that make it harder for you to just even get to the start line. And so and STEM, you chose STEM, like you talk about heart and grit, girl.
Yes.
One of the things that you said was you had to, like part of your journey was finding your self-worth. I know a lot of people wrestle with that particular thing. Can you tell us a little bit about like do you recall when or how you kind of came to that? I think you touched on it a bit, but this self-worth concept. And what did you actually do then to start to dig into that?
Well, you know what? It was a long journey because I pretty much, probably like a lot of other people, I didn't realize that I didn't know my worth. And it's funny because it wasn't until I turned 40 and I started to do some self-reflection that I realized that, you know what, I've accomplished so many great things in my life, but personally on the inside, I was a mess. I was a total mess. And it's funny because I have a good friend and she and I have been friends for like 30 years. And as I've gone through journeys, she's been my confidant, the person that I've gone to. And she has always said, Trina, you know your worth. You are a good person, know your worth. And I guess I really didn't know what she meant by that until I got to 40 and I started going, you know what? And my lack of self-worth started really to show up in relationships. And I think that's where it shows up for a lot of women. Right. Settling for men that I knew were not the right men for me, being subjected again to abuse, physical and mental abuse by men because I was looking for that acceptance that I never got from my mother. You know, my mother was tearing me down every day. You know, it was, you know, you're ugly, your hair is not looking long enough, you're not good enough. So I kept going, you know what? I'm going to find someone who's going to love me. I'm going to find someone who's going to realize who I am. So I went out giving of myself to people who didn't care about me and didn't give of me, didn't give back to me. And I think what they did was they saw, and people see the type of person you are, and they see if you have a weakness, they play on that. So they saw that I did not have self-worth. So they treated me accordingly. And I just was like, why is this happening to me? You know, I've done all these great things in my career, but personally, I'm just a mess. And I started to become angry and I started to become bitter. And I didn't really realize that until I was talking to my brother one day. I have two brothers, one of which I'm very close to. And we were talking, and I think it was recently, after I got divorced, and I was just kind of just venting about my ex and how he didn't want to help support the children. And, my brother, he listened. And when I was done, he said, you know what? And I said, what? He said, you sound like mom. And that was like,
yeah,
a punch in the face. And this is the woman who I was like, I don't want to be like, I left home to get away from. And he said that. He said, you sound very bitter and angry. And that was the start of me doing my inward reflection. And I said, you're right. So I started to go to therapy, just to get things off of my chest and to talk about things. I got back into church, attending church, reading my Bible, and just really setting my boundaries, realizing who I was and saying, okay, this is who I am. This is what I want. And I'm not settling for anything less. And it took a long journey. And, the person that I am today sitting before you is not the person that I was 5 years ago.
Oh, I'm really emotional. Like I really, really am. I want to give a shout out, first of all, to you for just being so open and sharing your journey. I think it's because I think it's easy for us to look at others and the success of others and see what they've accomplished, read people's bios, and that is what they have done. And it is nothing to take away from all of those wonderful achievements and accomplishments, because that takes a lot of grit and courage and work and effort and time. But it doesn't tell the whole story, does it?
No.
And so this is what I love about what you're willing to do here, because it shows us the powerhouse and the heart and the human behind the successes that I read on your bio. Both of those things are true. And I think that through this sharing, you're just able to reach so many other people. And I want to give a shout out to your friend of 30 years who's your person, and your brother who had the courage to say that to you.
I'm thankful for them every day.
Yeah. Okay. So I need to dry my eyes here for a second. When I talk about getting level, let's get level, I'm actually thinking about changing the name of my podcast to that, because I feel like we need to get level from a couple of perspectives. One for me is about getting level regarding gender equity. So when I say let's get level, it's about gender equity. And it's also about let's have some real freaking conversations here. Yes. Because, I think it's what's not being said, which is preventing us from being able to really bridge some of the differences and the similarities. So there's so much to explore there. So when I say let's get real and let's get level, I'm talking about those two things. What do you think? What do you feel like we need to get more real or level about?
Piggybacking on what you just said, I think because we're in a society and in a world today where we have the Instagrams, the Facebooks, and you see people at their best, right? You see the airbrush photo or the good times, and you don't see what's behind the curtains. And just like I decided to share my story with you today, I did in my book as well, but those are the things that people resonate with, because the airbrush photo on Instagram that you're saying, oh, I'm living my best life, that's not real, and because, it's sad, but it's funny because you look at those pictures and then you see people going, oh my God, I want to look like that person. Oh, I want to have that person's life. And I'm going, you only see what they want you to see.
Mm.
You don't see the truth. So I think we need to have more people who are being vulnerable. And I think, and like I said, it took me a while because in my head, I was afraid of being judged. I was afraid of the mistakes that I made. And it's funny because probably about 5 years ago, I ended up dating this guy. And this was like at the beginning of my journey to get myself together. And I shared with him some things, some past mistakes. And this guy was a total narcissist, just psychopath. And he really tried to tear me down. He was like, oh, and he really made me feel bad. And I said, wait a minute. I didn't even know you at that time. I was sharing, as a part of being vulnerable and being honest, and you're going to judge me. I was like, who are you to judge me?
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, I found out this person had done some things that were totally immoral, and I was like, okay, he was trying to project onto me, but those are the things that, hinder people from really wanting to tell their true story and be themselves. And I think we do. I think we need to get people who are real. These are the things that I've come through in my life, even with business. I mean, you see the people with the resumes and, you see, oh, I've got this multi-million-dollar business. Yeah, but how many times did you fail? How many times were you in debt? How many times did you file for bankruptcy? Things like that. Those are the things that people need to hear, because if they're only seeing the shiny, I'm living my best life moments, people think that that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yes to all of that. There's and I think I've referenced this previously on my show. There's a very, very simple diagram that I've seen numerous times. No doubt you've seen it too. It's a diagram or a graph, very simple graph of what we think success looks like, and it's it's a trajectory that's just a straight line in the positive upwards direction, and then the opposing one is what success really looks like, and it's this messy circular backwards. It just looks like a child has grabbed a crayon and scribbled all over the page, and that's really what you just described, isn't it?
Yes.
And being more real about that, I think is what we need more of. So what's the biggest obstacle that you think that you've achieved so far, and what lesson did you take from it?
Oh, wow. So are we talking about personally or professionally, or it doesn't matter?
It kind of doesn't matter, because I think they really knit into one another, don't they?
Yeah. I think for me, and I have the degrees, I have the certificates, but I think my thing that I had to overcome was me and my feeling, my confidence in overcoming that and becoming a strong woman, becoming confident. Because like I said, I was a mess and I didn't realize I was a mess. And that was the issue. And my mother passed away in 2006. And, and I went back to Chicago for we were doing all the arrangements that you do. And they said, well, we're going to have the children come in and you can tell us if you're satisfied with what we've done. And I didn't know it because, all my life, this woman has treated me so badly. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just here to do my child, duty and whatever. And when I was in that room, I lost it. I broke down and fell to the floor crying. Totally unexpected. Never did that before in my life. My brother had to pick me up off the floor. And it wasn't because of we had a mother-daughter bond that was broken. It was because I was thinking as I was crying, I was so angry because I was like, you have died and you have left me like this. You have left me screwed up and just, so feeling so bad about myself. And I was so angry about that. So to answer your question, I am proud that I have overcome that. I have come to the other side of the mountain. And, and I think about my mother, and she was a miserable person, and she never did her work. And that's what I call her work on herself. And she lived like that. And she projected that onto me. And she died like that. And I'm thinking, what a sad life. And there are a lot of people who are out there like that. And that's why I want to tell my story, because you have to realize it, and you have to do yourself, or you can't look to anyone else to validate you. You know, you have to realize who you are within yourself. So for me, I don't care how much money I make. I don't care how many titles I have, how many careers I've had. Me realizing that I was worth more than what I was told and how I was showing up for myself. That's my biggest accomplishment.
Wow. Wow, yeah, it is a reminder, isn't it, how we typically define success, certainly in the Western world, is around the outside stuff, that the achievements that we can see on a resume or see on Instagram or see walking down the street because there's a nice house and cars in the driveway and our lawn looks good.
Yes.
But then when we close our eyes at the end of each day, that's really where you feel success or not. It's those, you close your eyes and you're with yourself at the end of every day, even if you have someone there beside you in your bed, regardless whether or not, you really ultimately have to be at peace with yourself.
Yes.
Wow. So talk to me a little bit about how or if fear played a role in, like, I'm thinking now around, because no doubt there'll have been that in your personal journey, so your professional, like your career, your education, and like, it had to be fearful being the first person in your family to go into college.
Oh yeah, fear was right there alongside me being driven. Being the first person to go to college, I feared whether I was going to be able to complete it and pay for it. That's why I joined the military. In my career, just and you touched on it earlier, but being a female now, but being a female of color,
Yeah.
I've had to overcome some other issues.
Yeah.
So that has been my fear. And, you know, it's funny because 9 years ago, I moved across the country to another city, actually the city that I'm currently in now, for a position with a job with a well-known, prestigious organization. And from the day I walked in the door, I said, this is not right. This does not feel good in my spirit. And I had people coming after me and attacking me for no other reason than just because I was me and I was confident. And, you know, those are the type of things you have to overcome. So, you know, here I am, I'm fearing, I'm going, Lord, you know, I moved across country. At the time, my children were like 4 and 5. And I'm going, I uprooted my family to come here for a job that I hate, that people are attacking me. What's going to happen? Because these people were trying to get me fired. And I was like, oh my goodness, what if I lose it all? So every step of the way, there's some kind of fear. And I don't care, you know, the most successful person can tell you, oh, I fear nothing. No, that's not true. They're not telling the truth, because I don't care, you know, if you're the most confident person in the world, there's something that you fear.
I think thank you for sharing that story. I think fear is an interesting thing to talk about, because I too agree that there's this word, we use the word fearless. Yes. And I like the spirit behind it. I think the spirit behind it is to feel the fear and do it anyway.
Right.
But like, maybe it's more like fear less. That's kind of good. But the word itself, I feel like, gives people the impression that you should not be feeling fear, and that if you are feeling fear, that there's something wrong with the direction you might be going in. And so I love hearing examples like you've just shared about feeling the fear and doing it anyway, that it's alongside you. What a great description, that it's alongside you. You may have heard this before, Trina. There's apparently, you know, there's 2 meanings for fear. So there's an acronym, 2 acronyms: forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. The choice is yours. And you certainly are a beautiful example of that. So with that, in this talk of fear, do you have any advice or thoughts on how others, if they are sitting here listening, feeling wrought with fear, how have you learned to navigate, make these brave, bold choices, many of them on your own, with fear also by your side?
You know, one of my favorite quotes is by Nelson Mandela. And the quote is, it always seems impossible until it's done. And that's true. That's fear. you're afraid, you don't know if you can do it. But once you step out, you've realized, okay, it's not as bad as what I thought. And in my life, and I'm pretty sure in yours, you set out to do something and it takes a detour. Like you were saying, it's messy. It may not go that straight line that you're like, okay, from A to B to C. And I look back now over my life and I go, I wanted to do this, but I took a detour and I ended up here, which ended up leading me to something better. And that's kind of how I look at it. As I'm going, this is what I want to do in life, and I'm going to try. But if something comes, and I don't know what you call it, but I call him God. If God decides to change my path, there's something better for me. And that's what I try to look at. I try not to let fear hinder me, even though I do have fear. And I'm always going, okay, I want to succeed. Everybody wants to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I want to accomplish my goal. I want to succeed. But sometimes that thing may be the thing that leads you to something else that is really the thing. So, just you have to do it. And if you get derailed or detoured, it's like what I like to say, don't have regrets, because the detour may be leading you to somewhere that is better than what you thought you had planned.
So good. I wish I had known that the detours earlier in my life were just that, detours, instead of me being persistent and going down the path that was not mine. And interestingly, it wasn't I at 40 as well, was when I had this, I call it an awakening, and took the time then to do the inner work, to then realize the detours along the way had been leading me, had been trying to guide me. They would like, go this way. There were these gentle nudges that I didn't pay attention to. So I love your, description of that. And thank you for sharing that. I'd like to shift gears a little bit now and talk to you and hear about your perspective on starting your business. So tell us a little bit about, your journey through the business world and what got you to that point, at the standing at the edge of the mountain. At some point you got to jump off the cliff to start your own business. Talk to us a little bit about how it came to that point and how you made that decision to leap.
Well, I've always wanted to work for myself and have my own business. Even though I was in corporate, I knew there was something more for me. And it sounds funny because I know a lot of people go, oh my God, you had these great jobs, you had great salaries, but I always knew there was something more. That wasn't just my destiny to just work for someone else and make the money and that was it. So I've always wanted to do it. And it's funny because I've gone through different things that I decided that was going to be my business. And I was like, yeah, that's not so much. That doesn't work to lead me here to where I am today. And, again, I just thought about it. I said, okay, this is what I was meant to do, because I've had this desire all my life. I just now have to figure what I can do that actually is something that I can give back from my experience, because I want to impact the people that I serve and I want to serve. So the journey has been rough. Like I said, different things. Okay, well, I'm qualified. I know how to do this. I have experience and do that. And sometimes your experience is not necessarily that path. And again, when we were talking about the detour. So where I am today is really great, because, and it's funny, this whole pandemic, people said, oh my God, it's horrible. But in so many ways it's a good thing, because I was doing leadership development, which I'm qualified to do. But when this pandemic hit and I started realizing my STEM skills and my technical skills are things that people need in this time, I need to pivot and shift. And that's what I did. And, and that's entrepreneurship. That's having your own business. You have to shift, you have to adjust, you have to see what's needed at the time. And, it's a journey, it's a path.
I love how you just brought in, the pivot and shift again. It's a theme, isn't it?
Yes.
Certainly through what I'm hearing through your journey in life. And I think that's just what really makes people successful now in whatever path they choose.
Yes.
Staying in corporate, your only job security, whether, corporate or otherwise, or your own business, is to be able to keep your skills relevant, up to date, and pivot when when necessary, whatever your sandbox is, your own business, again, corporate, pivoting and shifting. It's just, I think we are having to learn to do that at an accelerated pace.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true, right? And that, I think, is a very interesting piece that has me fascinated right now, especially during this COVID time. I say especially, I think we can no longer ignore it. It's around the mental health and well-being of us as individuals, and that businesses have to look at as well from an employee perspective. We can't just we can't ignore the statistics, which are staggering and very upsetting in terms of depression rates and obesity, right?
Yes.
Rates that they shouldn't be at. We know better, but we're not doing better. What do you do to keep yourself, it's not easy being an entrepreneur, what do you do to keep yourself balanced and well? I say balanced. I think that's always a journey in and of itself. But do you have any rituals or tools to keep you motivated, centered, and focused on your mission to help, to serve others?
I do. And it starts with my day. I wake up, I walk my dog. So I do a 3-mile walk with him. And that's kind of just to free my mind. And we're out at 5:30 in the morning, and it's very calming because there's not many people out and you're just walking. But I do that. I have my journal that I write down my goals in. And then once I get in, I do a little home workout. And I have a planner that I have all my things planned for each day, what I want to do. But sometimes, like anything else, you're like, you know what? I just need some time for me. Mm-hmm. And my big thing right now is going back to the mental health is peace of mind. Because you can't keep going if you don't take time out for yourself. And some days I go, you know what, I have this to do, I have that to do. But some days I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit back. I'm going to watch mindless TV, whatever that may be. Everyone knows what, that is that you need to do to kind of center and bring you back. And then I have 2 teenagers that, keep me in my reality. But yeah, I think just getting out and, whatever that form of exercise is, I think that's very crucial for mental, and we were speaking on the physical fitness part of it. And it doesn't have to be anything major. I do Pilates, I walk. I don't do anything I don't do any of these extreme exercises or anything like that. But that's my time. That's my time to really take care of my body and to take care of my mind. And that's what I do. And I think each person needs to find whatever that is that works for them.
I appreciate you again sharing. I feel like I've been saying that like 4 or 5 times now. I really do. I love hearing what people's strategies are, and consistently, I hear from guests as well as just anyone that I speak with about this, because it's sort of a passion of mine. Is it really goes back to some basics, doesn't it? Like, move daily. So move your body, eat well. It doesn't mean eat clean 100% of the time, but eat well, nourish your body, sleep well. And I think one that I like to put in there too is to love more. And loving more is like yourself as well as others, right? The relationships we have with others nurture our soul and our spirit. And something else I pulled out from what you said is how the 2 words came to mind, and that's intention and attention. So you're very intentional about what gets your attention.
Yes.
And I think many of us are living lives like sleepwalking through life.
Oh my goodness. Yes, that is so true. And, and I realized that with myself too, that I was like, you know what, it seemed like I'm just being carried along through life. And I'm glad you mentioned the word intention, because now I am very intentional. I'm intentional how I spend my day, what I'm doing, who I'm spending it with. If it's not someone who I think is going to encourage me or better me, or that I can encourage them, I don't even waste my time. Because you know what? Time is so finite. You don't know to say, look at it. We're in a pandemic now. Who would ever thought that we will be in a global pandemic? So, time is very precious. And like you said, loving yourself, loving the people, who are around you, your family, friends, whatever that may be. And you really have to be intentional about what you're doing in life, because if you're not, you will find it, you've gotten to the end of the road and you're like, what did I do? How did I get here? And it's just because you've just kind of like, ooh, like a tornado, you've just been carried from one place to the next.
It's so true. I'm laughing. I'm laughing because otherwise I would cry. I am the kind of person who laughs sometimes, unfortunately, in inappropriate situations. So the tornado piece made me laugh because that was me at 40. I woke up, really felt like one day, and I was like, I did everything that I set out to do. Mm-hmm. I checked all the boxes. I achieved all the things. And on the outside, I have the perfect life. Mm-hmm. Why do I feel so broken and miserable?
Exactly. And that was me. I checked all the boxes, I've done this, I've done that. And then, when you look inside yourself, you're going, I'm not.
Who are you?
Yeah, I'm not the great person that I put out in the world.
That's right. And that's the tornado, my friends. That's certainly where that tornado can take you. I'd love to get your perspective on how you have navigated, because I don't want to use the word balance because there's no balance here at all either, navigated the world of work and motherhood.
Oh my goodness.
Because I don't think we talk about this enough either. People know that we're mothers in the workplace, but it's kind of like, that's all that, you maybe talk about what you did on the weekend with your kids, but then the actual difficulties and realities of trying to be both at the same time, because you're both at the same time. Yeah, talk to me about that.
I'm just going to be real. It's hard.
Okay.
It is hard. And before this pandemic hit, I was traveling constantly. And it got to a point where whenever I would tell my kids, I'm like, okay, tomorrow I'm going here. They were like, oh, you're going again? And then I started feeling really bad because I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I'm always gone. They're growing up before my eyes and I'm always gone. It is hard because being a single mother, you have to work. You have to pay the bills, and for me, I've always, from teenage years on, I knew that I had no one to rely on. Mm-hmm. I knew it was me. I had to do it. I had to work. That's why I was so driven, because I knew, okay, I got to work. I got to make things happen. And the same thing with being a mother. I'm like, okay, I got to keep a roof over our heads. I have to feed these children. I have to do whatever. So doing that, working a full-time job, starting my business, it just, it's like, you're like, oh, okay, I'm juggling this plate. I'm juggling, which one is going to fall? It's very difficult. And, and again, you hear people going, oh, it's great. Oh, I do this, I do that, and you're like, wow, you have a great, how do you do that all, And I'm like, okay, well, I don't have a maid. I don't have a chef. So, I have to do all these things myself. And I'm just going to be real. Some days, I come home and I tell my kids, you know what? I don't feel like cooking. There's cereal. Some days, I remember, when I was really in the midst of really trying to get myself together, there was one day where I was just mentally, I just couldn't do it anymore. And I just told my kids, I said, I'm going to go in my room. I'm going to close the door, and I don't want to be bothered for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I sat in bed all day long just because my mind was exhausted. I was so exhausted mentally just from everything, and honestly, to be your best for your children, you got to be the best for yourself. And again, that was something I didn't learn until later on, that, what, for them to get the best of me, I got to be the best of me for myself. So you got to carve out that time, from working, because I was going, it was so bad that I didn't realize what day I was on, because it was, okay, let me work. Okay, I'm on a plane. Okay, I'm here, I'm there. And I was just like, what day is it? Where am I going? What am I doing? So it's hard. It's very hard. And like I said, now I don't feel guilty. I don't feel guilty when I say, you know what? Today is my day. I'm going to take a bubble bath. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to do whatever, because those are the things that you have to do to keep going. Because if you don't, that's when you fall into depression. And I hate to say it, sadly, a lot of people get to a point where they think they can't cope. And then that's when suicide happens. Yeah. So it's very important to take care of yourself. There is no balance. I hate when people say, oh, your work home life balance. There's no such thing. I've had to explain to people when I was working, I was like, um, and it's funny because I was traveling, this was several years ago, and I was traveling to Dallas and I would drive, but the schedule that we had, if I stayed the whole work schedule, and this was with the military, that I would have to get on the road and drive really late, which would get me home late. And I would have to be up early in the morning. So I go to a guy who's, my senior, and I say, I would really like to leave earlier because I have a 4-hour drive and then I have to get up and go to work in the morning. But he said, well, we all have a job to go to Monday morning. And I was like, okay, this is true, but you have a wife that's sitting at home with your children.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a single mother. You're getting on a plane for an hour flight. I have to drive 4 hours, and I don't want to be wrapped around a tree because I was so tired and I fell asleep. And people just don't understand that. And I knew he couldn't understand it. And he was like, well, we'll have to get up. It was like an act of the president to approve this for me. But those are the things that people don't understand. And I think we do. I think we need to talk about this more. We need to say that, okay, these are the things that we're dealing with. Being a single mother, if you're doing it correctly, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to make everything happen. You're trying to make sure that your home is taken care of, that you're working. I'm trying to make sure that I'm giving that time to my children. And then on top of all of that, I want them to see that, okay, my mom works. My mom has a business. She's doing all these things. And hopefully that is inspiration for them. But you're the pie piper, the mad hatter, the baker, the butcher stick. You're all of that at one time.
Yeah, I am fascinated by these kinds of topics because as I am, as I work as a consultant specifically in the leadership development space. So that was interesting because I didn't know that piece about you and you shared that at the beginning. And I really feel called to talk more about humanizing leadership. And that is the avenue through which I seek to find greater gender equity, as well as equity for all, because we know what happens when women rise. It's actually we all rise. That's the interesting thing, because typically the women's approaches, and I'm generalizing here, and I don't really like generalizations, but that seems to be what the data is telling us, is that the female's approach to leadership is more inclusive and collaborative and community oriented versus competitive. Yes. Even though I'm sure you can be competitive as can I. Ask my partner, he'll tell you that I can be as competitive as anyone. And so I'm interested, I think it's these conversations that are really going to start transforming those systems, the old systems in our workplaces that need to be redesigned to better support the individuality of all our people. And of all our pieces, because you can't design a workplace in one way that's going to work for, the individuality of who exists in the workplace now.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yes.
So what makes you feel most inspired and like your best self?
My best self, what inspires me to be my best self is knowing that I was created to do something amazing. And I'm inspired to fulfill that purpose that I was created for. And my thing is, I don't want to die or get old and look back and go, I have, these shoulda, woulda, couldas. I have these regrets. I want to serve. I want to impact people. And I want to be that person that I needed when I was going through all the things that I was going through. That's why, whenever people ask me, how do you do this? How do you do it? I'm glad to share. I don't fear telling my story. Like I said, at one point I was afraid of being judged. I was like, oh, people are going to say, oh, you made this mistake, you made that mistake. But we're all human, and we make mistakes, things like that happen. And again, I'm so grateful for my friend of 30 years, because she would say that I would tell her, these things, and I would be so hard on myself. And she was like, you're human. You made a mistake. So what? You're a good person. Mm-hmm. So that's what inspires me, that I have this, my mess has inspired me to help someone else to have their amazing life.
Hmm. I remember a friend of mine saying to me once, your mess becomes your message.
Yes.
I was like, oh, I like that.
Yes.
I know that you are very goal driven. You set high goals for yourself and achieve them or surpass them. You've got self motivation and discipline, and you know, certainly driving forces behind who you are and what you've achieved, despite the odds being stacked against you. Talk to us a little bit then about how, well, I know you use those qualities in your business now. You created it and sustaining it. What is it that you do in your business? Like, you tell us a little bit about how you serve others and why people come to you to solve a problem. What is it that you're helping them solve?
Well, I work with small to medium-sized businesses to help them elevate their communication so that they can communicate with their clients or their employees that are remote, especially in this time, in this day and age. We all kind of have been forced to, do this, to work remotely and do online conferencings and meetings and things like that. But there's people who are not doing it well. They're doing it, they're like, okay, I have to do it, so I've done it. Or they're not doing it where it actually integrates with their business. So that's where I help them. I go in and said, okay, here's things that can help your operations be more effective and run more efficiently. Because let's just say, there's a company that has employees in multiple locations, and all the time may not be able to travel to those locations, or they're sending emails and they're going, okay, this is important information and I need my employees to have it. So they're emailing, and you're hoping that the employee sees it and reads it. But I'm thinking, if you take communication technology and you say, okay, let's live stream this, then you still have that connection with your employees. They still feel like, okay, it's not just an email where you just send out an email and they may read it, they may not, but at least you're there with them. They can ask questions and things like that. So that's where I took my experience in technology and STEM and said, okay, let me bring this forward and serve other people and help them to, grow their business and help their operations actually go forth and still be sustainable, but be productive and profitable without travel expenses and without having to have all of these different systems that don't talk to each other.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we're just overwhelmed, really, aren't we? Like with yes, things to do, technology, which is great, but when not integrated well, it's just adds to the noise. I have a very, very noisy mind. I think I'm probably speaking on, like others may say as well. There's so much going on. It's funny you mentioned email. I have 4 email accounts. Business ones for different reasons and different clients that I work with who want me to have an internal account. Included in this also, I need to just give a little bit more fine print info or context. One of them is also my Gmail account, okay? All right, so all these email accounts taken into account, looking at them all, guess how many unread emails I have?
Oh, I can imagine. What, 1,000?
5,469 as of right now. So to your point,
I probably surpassed you.
I don't say that with pride. It's more to your point of you send an email hoping and expecting that people are going to A, open it, B, read the whole thing, and C, probably take the intent of what the message was. We've got good people, well-intentioned, smart, capable, but just inundated with far too many things. So I love how you have bridged those aspects of your knowledge, experience, including your life experience. To bring, I love that, that your humanity and person can come to this job too, right? It's not just the technical, very two-dimensional. You bring a 3D, like animated version because of who you are. I have a question for you about success. We talked about success a number of minutes ago, and I was referencing the two different, the straight line versus the messy version of getting towards achieving your goals. Why do you believe that people succeed?
I think it's a lot of hard work. I think it's self-determination. And then some people, unfortunately, some people succeed because they're trying to prove something to other people.
Mm.
And everyone has a different definition of what success is for them. For myself, if you had asked me in my 20s, success was, oh, yes, the corporate job, the salary, things like that. Today, my definition of success is peace. I want peace of mind. I want peace in my life. And of course, that brings the the financial security, the abundance in your life. And again, in my 20s, I didn't think anything about that. I was thinking, oh, the house, the car, the money, the salary. So everyone has that different driver that drives them. But for me, it's peace. Peace, which brings me freedom to be with my children, freedom to work my own business, to work the clients that I want to work with, to not work if that's what I choose to. So peace is my big success.
I love the simplicity of that, the power of that, the depth of that. You're just saying the word peace. I just took this gentle, deep breath.
Yes.
It feels expansive. It feels intentional, like it's a life by choice, not chance.
Yes, definitely.
What advice would you have, because of the experience that you have shared with us and that you've had in your own career, for people who are wanting to leave their job and go freelance or start their own small business? What advice do you wish you had at the time when you started yours that you'd like to pass on to others?
Oh, I wish I had someone to tell me in the beginning not to chase the money, to actually look for what's the passion that burns inside of you. I mean, we all have it. We have some desire. And again, we're in a society where we have to work, we have to make a living, we need finances. But I think if you really see what it is that drives you, what you're passionate about, I think that is a better determination, a determining factor of success and you getting to where you want to be. So my daughter, she's an artist. She has this God-given talent where she can draw and she paints very well. And that's all she wants to do. And, I've said, okay, what do you want to go to college for? She's like, I just want to do my art. I just want to do my art. And I'm like, okay, we can do that, and I've posed other things to her and I'm like, oh, do you want to be a graphic designer? This would be, more of a good career. But she's like, I want to do my art. I'm like, okay, but I wish someone had to tell me not to chase the money, to just really do what my heart desired and what I was passionate about. Because, the scripture says, your gifts will make room for you. And I think if we follow that, you'll be fine.
I love that. I had my mom on my radio show a year ago, and one of the things that she said to me on the show, and I know I've referenced this a couple of times since as well. I remember being really mad when she told me, because I wish she had told me that when I was young. So she said to me, follow your heart, but don't leave your head behind. And I was like, it was beautiful. I'm like, where was that when I was 20? Why didn't you tell me then? Because anyway, I was saying that sort of in jest, although really did feel that. I'm sure if my mom had been able to find those exact words at that time, she would have said that. So I have just a few rapid fire questions for you, if that's okay, before we wrap up this amazing conversation. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Ooh, my younger self, I would say, you're enough.
What does the world need more of?
Kindness and happiness from everyone, every avenue. I think we just need more kindness. There's so much negativity and hate. I think we just need to be more just kinder to each other.
And do you have a go-to book or podcast that you love and wish to share with my listeners? Oh, we didn't even talk about your book. Tell us, you know what, forget that question. Just tell us quickly about your book. What is your book about and how people get a copy?
Okay, so my book is titled From a Mess to Amazing, 7 Steps to Create the Life You Deserve. And you can get it Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere. But the book is about my triumphs through life. It's half memoir, half self-help. I talk about my mistakes that I've made during my life and how I've overcome them, and helping you, giving you some steps on how you can not go through the mess that I went through, but will help you have a life that you really want to have.
That's amazing. I have so much gratitude towards you. I feel so much gratitude towards you, not only for your time, of course, but just for being so open and sharing your journey with me and my listeners today. Trina, thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me. And I feel the same as well. Hopefully this won't be our last connection, but I really thank you.
You're welcome. And I don't think it's going to be, and you're not going to be able to get rid of me that easily.
I'm fine with that.
Great. And of course, I'd like to thank all of you as well, all of you Lady Boss listeners, for tuning in to today's show. And I invite you to reach out directly to me at louisehreed.com if you have any questions or want to talk about coaching, speaking engagements, or leadership consulting. Let's all live inspired, grow together, and be brave, be bold, and be happy. I invite you to check out Trina's website, which will be in our show notes. And please reach out to Trina and connect with her as well. Until next Tuesday, I'm Louise H. Reed, wishing all of you an amazing day. And in the words of Trina, our lovely guest today, I encourage you to be the best for your children. In order to be the best for your children, you have to be the best for yourself. Thanks very much, my friends, and have a fantastic day.